On this episode of Hot Hardware's 2.5 Geeks, we're going to talk about a super fast Radeon from Sapphire, some new enterprise storage from Intel, and Chris has a cool camera to talk about next. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome back to the latest episode of Hot Hardware's 2.5 Geeks live stream. Chris and I are handling things solo while our fearless leader is out on vacation this week. There's Chris over there looking a little different than normal. We'll talk about that a little later. Yeah, it looks good, but definitely different. He looks a little like a little cute little guy next to me in that split screen. But yeah, so lots of stuff going on. We've been exceptionally busy, especially without Dave around. Tons of articles up on the site, tons of news. Figure we'll jump into some of the articles that we've posted the last couple of weeks. We didn't see you last week. We took a little bit of time off, but of course the website did not stop. We had a ton of stuff published. So we should probably get rolling here, Chris. Chris, anything you want to say before we get started, or are we ready to kick things off here?
No, let's turbo it. Let's go.
All right, let's turbo it. So if you haven't been by the site, which shame on you if you haven't, a couple of interesting reviews went up. We'll get to the meat, the Sapphire card and the Intel SSD a little bit later. But our man Ben took a look at the Dell Latitude 7320 convertible device. It was actually a follow-up to our original review. So when we first took a look at the 7320, it was with the pre-production device, but Dell followed up with an actual retail unit that Ben took for a spin as well. We have some updated numbers, some updated aesthetics, a few little tweaks to the device that actually, made it a little better. We saw some improved multi-threaded performance. And this particular model that we got didn't have the bump out on the back. The original version had a smart card reader, and it caused sort of a little bit of a protrusion on the backside. That's gone in the retail version that we looked at. Overall, if you scroll through the numbers, you'll see really strong performance for such a thin and light device. And that's because it's featuring Tiger Lake. So you're looking at a form factor similar to Microsoft's Surface convertible devices, but with, a much more updated platform inside. And while it can't compete with, the highest end Ultrabooks and full-size notebooks, for this class of device, it's actually pretty quick. And battery life's decent. It's not great because it's such a small device, doesn't have a huge battery in it. But you're talking really killer single thread, competitive multi-thread, strong application performance in something like PC Mark in a, detachable form factor with a kickstand. Pretty slick little device considering, the horsepower you get out of it. Chris, what's your thoughts on this versus, say, a Surface or, other detachables?
Yeah, I mean, I think the form factor is interesting. It always comes back to the question of lappability for me. If we can fix the hinge and get that solid, that'd be a huge bonus. But obviously, that's a huge engineering concern. But for a general purpose device like this, to be able to just take it as a tablet when you want to do some web browsing or some lighter tasks, that's very, very handy. Battery life on this, despite being so thin, is still looking good, up over 6-7 hours, so not a lot to complain about there.
Yeah, no, I agree. If you're the type of I'm like you, the lappability of these devices with kickstands is not for me. I prefer, a full clamshell design. But if you like a tablet, if you like the tablet form factor with the convenience of having a detachable keyboard,
for sure,
probably the best detachable out there right now in terms of performance. It's definitely the latest platform. I haven't seen other Tiger Lake detachables this refined. So pretty cool device.
And that is the other little issue with the Surface devices, is they do tend to be a little behind on hardware.
Yeah.
It always seems like they're a generation or so behind.
They've definitely been phoning in the last few designs. I think they got burned on a security issue. I think it was with the Skylake generation, and it seems they've been ultra conservative since then. It is what it is. Let their partners make devices. The only caveat with this guy, this was an interesting development. When we first took a look at it, pricing was higher than the Surface business class devices. But now that it's hit retail and things have settled and Dell has made some tweaks, it's actually a touch cheaper than the latest Surface for business devices with better performance. So obviously a no-brainer. Check it out if you're into this form factor. Really cool device. In addition to that, we also had Miriam took a look at the brand new TCL 20 Pro 5G. This is a really affordable 5G phone. It's a follow-up to the TCL devices that we took a look at previously, but with 5G support and some premium features in here. So it's a good-looking phone, if you ask me. Just looking at the back looks cool. You know, it's an attractive design. But what makes this interesting, you know, first, it's an affordable 5G phone. It's packing, you know, Qualcomm Snapdragon processor, but for an affordable phone, it's got some features that you would normally find in some premium devices. Like it's got optical image stabilization. It's got, I believe it was an IP52 dust and water resistance rating. It's got wireless charging, which is typically absent from this class of devices. Overall, pretty cool. Chris, did you get a chance to look at this one? Any opinions on this guy?
I haven't looked too close, but you know, the camera does seem good for a $500 phone, 48 megapixel sensor. And in the sample shots that Miriam has down below, you can see some pretty good detail with it. It really does have a lot of those more higher end premium features, the kind of fall away curved edges to the screen, which personally I don't like so much. I like just, you know, the traditional flat edges. But some people like the premium look and feel of that. So to each their own there. But I think the camera array is particularly interesting on this. Doesn't seem like there's any real camera bump. They managed to keep it all flush with the back of the phone, which I personally like. You know, if you're going to throw a case on it, maybe it doesn't matter so much, but maybe you don't have to, you know, worry so much about putting a case on this and covering up that beautiful kind of bluish blue-green color. That's quite striking. So, you know, as we go down here, here's some photos. They're nice and sharp. It looks like they have good dynamic range. A lot of cameras, you might expect the sky to blow out in the reflection here. But it seems to be handling it all quite well, from shadows to highlights. So, you know, not too bad. It's only when you get the sun creeping in the top right corner here that it seems to have any issues, but honestly, that can happen with some DSLRs and other high-end cameras if you're not too careful with how you're shooting anyway. So definitely a respectable photo experience, especially in this $500 price band.
Yeah, you know, agreed. I think it's a good-looking device. The only issue with the screen, you know, the curve is personal preference. I'm like you. I think I like flat now too. I had a stretch where I liked the wackier designs and the waterfall displays, but I prefer flat now too. But it's only 60 hertz display on this guy. That's totally forgivable, I think, for a phone in this price range. Though there are others. I think from OnePlus has a higher refresh rate display in this price band. But you know, if you're looking for a full-featured phone that's not going to break the bank, pretty cool device. So definitely come by the site and check that out. Miriam does a great job with tons of pictures, lots of a handful of benchmarks in there too, though we did look at an earlier TCL 20 version as well, so we kept this review a bit condensed. But stop by the site, check that out. Really cool little device. A couple of while we're talking mobile, we got word, I believe it was last night, that Samsung has just announced the latest Unpacked event for August 11th, and most likely going to see the brand new Galaxy Z Fold 3 and the Z Flip 3. There was some leaks, so probably going to be those devices. I think there was a massive leak last week that sort of spilled the beans that this was happening. But yeah, if over the last couple of generations, I think the foldable devices have really gotten more and more refined. It seems like some of the more, I want to say, tech savvy, discerning friends of mine that have used some of the foldable devices have been really happy with the second gen. So assuming the third gen is only going to improve on that, these are probably going to be cool. I think the big wild card is going to be price and availability with everything that's going on around the world. Yeah, unfortunately. In addition to the phones, I think there's supposedly a Galaxy Watch 4 coming and some new buds as well. Really interesting. I think we're going to most likely see Snapdragon 888 Plus and 888 in the phones. What do you think? Foldables for you? Not quite ready?
It's Yeah, it's hard to say. I think that the Flip is definitely a more interesting form factor to me than the Fold. I don't necessarily need more screen on my phone. If I really want that, I'll grab a tablet. But if I can, flip it down to a normal size phone to half the size and tuck it away, I'm not as worried about the thickness as I think a lot of people are. I usually have two phones in my pocket for work and personal use anyway. So I do think that's interesting. And of course, I, grew up with flip cell phones, including the Razor. So, that bit of nostalgia and just kind of tactile feedback as you wear out the hinge, wasting time. But
Yeah, it's funny. One of my favorite cell phones before the smartphone era, I had a little tiny, I forget the model. It was a little tiny Siemens phone, like that big, from Singular Wireless. Like literally, it was that big, and it was a slider, super tiny. Like it was so easy to carry around. It was just for calls and rudimentary texts. Back then when you had to hit the 5 button, 3 times to get to letter L or whatever the hell it was. But so I think I'm with you. I think the Fold, if it's a little thinner, a little lighter, the hinge is a little more robust. Oh, the Flip. Sorry, you're right. The Flip.
I think it's the Flip. It's a little one. Yep.
Yes, you're correct. I'm brain dead. I've been working too much today. But that's the form factor I too would personally prefer. So we'll see. We'll see what Samsung comes out with.
And that's that's the form factor Motorola was using, but I never got a chance to try that phone. So, there.
I'm a Samsung.
The exact name escapes me.
Yeah, I'm a Samsung user now. Had a horrible experience with the Note 10. Switched to a great experience with the Note 8. Crappy experience with the Note 10. Now I'm on an S20, and it's been perfect for like 6 months. Have it moved to an S21. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. I'm good with Samsung software, and if they make a really fast device, we'll see. We got Raymond saying can't wait, but where to keep the S Pen? Let me show that. There, the S Pen's going to be in your pocket. It ain't going to be on the phone. All right, we should probably move on.
You were much more polite with that than I expected you to say.
I have to be nice to Raymond. I see him in real life from time to time. And now another interesting leak to, I think this also hit today. Some benchmarks leaked of the Intel Core i9-12900K. That's reportedly going to be the top-end Alder Lake desktop CPU. And it was a Cinebench R20 benchmark, and it showed it significantly outrunning a Ryzen 9 5950X 16-core processor. Now, we have to give the caveat, like we normally would with the leak, take it with a grain of salt. It's not only is it really easy to fake some benchmarks, it's also really easy to just post something on Twitter and say it came from a benchmark, and when it really didn't, alter some screenshots, what have you. So obviously this is not set in stone. Alder Lake is not shipping. There's tons of optimizations that could happen if this is a qualification platform. Who knows? But according to the leak, non-overclocked single thread was up over 800 and multi-thread up over 11.6. And I believe if I jump through the text, what you'll see with a 5950X is like a 640-ish score with a little under 10,000 in the multi-thread. So it looks like a nice jump, especially in that single thread for Alder Lake. We took a look at Windows 11 on Lakefield and saw some interesting improvements in performance, assuming Microsoft's tweaking the scheduler and working closely with Intel. We know they're working closely with Intel, I should say, to optimize performance on some next-gen platforms. So, I don't know. Over and above the architecture, maybe there's some software magic here. Any thoughts, Chris?
I mean, it seems like more than the typical generation over generation improvement that we usually get. Usually maybe there's like a 5% bump in performance. That's a pretty big leap there. So I guess we'll say big if true, but we'll have to wait and see until we can really test it ourselves to see if it plays out. But if true, I mean, that's huge for gaming and just general responsiveness of the system and lots of applications. Any bursty workloads are really going to like the single core performance, and I mean that's monstrous multi-core performance as well. So looks like a good chip again, if true. So I'm cautiously optimistic. And speaking to people, there's lots of trepidation
because of the big little design. But I don't know if they squeeze some clock and tweak those, turbo algos, and the manufacturing process has some time to mature. Those high performance cores could be pretty tasty. So yeah, we'll wait and see. Other than that, I think that's probably where we'll cut the short, quick and dirty posts. Obviously, stop by hothardware.com if you haven't been there. The guys on the news team post a dozen to 16 news posts a day. Plus, we have multiple features a week usually. So that's only a small taste of what's been up on the site over the past few days. So definitely stop by the site for more. We have James chiming in the chat that says, seems like some funky numbering. Yeah, that's what happens with leaks. So who knows? Who knows what's good there? It is interesting to talk about. We could probably do a whole podcast just speculating on Alder Lake and next-gen AMD stuff, but we'll see. I want to see some good stuff because, one, I want to keep working and writing about this stuff, and I want that competition to be fierce when all the chip shortages come to an end and people can buy some killer hardware at competitive prices. So we'll see. Fingers crossed.
All right.
Before
I guess,
go ahead.
Well, I guess if we consider that it would have been something like second-gen Ryzen that really lit the fire under Intel, realizing that AMD was serious for taking their crown, and then the time it takes to develop the new technology from that point, I think we're probably about there. Yeah,
I mean, Intel still has, theoretically a manufacturing disadvantage, depending on how you quantify Intel 10 nanometer versus say, TSMC 7. But, we've seen Intel in this position before, and now they have I think a really good leader at the helm, and they're cleaning house and hopefully making some changes for the better. I'm going to remain cautiously optimistic. That's all I will say. I'm looking forward to some interesting things to write about in the next few months.
Yep.
Fair enough, right? And before we get to the meat, Chris, you're looking a little bit different over there. Something special going on with the camera setup?
Yeah. So I am test driving a Dell's 4K UltraSharp webcam. I can't show you the webcam itself, obviously, because it's looking at my face. But yeah, so compared to a typical webcam you'd be used to, I don't know that there's many 4K webcams out there. Most people would be using like a 1080p Logitech webcam or something like that. So a lot of extra resolution, but you don't necessarily need or want all the resolution at once, because web conferencing calls, which are going to be the primary use, are going to knock down the resolution a lot. But what this does afford you is it can basically crop into zoom without a lot of detail. So right now I have it set to on the full wide view, 90 degrees. I can manually punch in, and I'll just switch to my full feed here. So this would be like a 65-degree angle of view instead of a 90-degree angle of view, which is probably more akin to what I'd usually use on a call. But if I want, there's also an AI auto framing option that will track in on where I am, and it's probably just a little bit wider than the 65 degrees. But if I were to move around, it would readjust and pick out my position. And I haven't tested yet to see how far away I could be and have it zoom in, but it is handy that you can just kind of set it up there somewhere and let it take care of the framing for you, particularly if you had a situation where maybe you're walking around presenting at a board or something and are streaming it for a conference call type situation. It doesn't really track you perfectly in real time. It's more like it updates every so often. So it's not like some of the like Polycom conference room cameras I've used that will literally watch you walk across the room and track your progress. But yeah, it's nice and sharp. I am missing the shallower depth of field to cut out my clutter in the background that I get from a DSLR. But overall for detail, it's pretty good. And also my room right now I have the light on here, but overall is fairly dark, and it's doing a pretty good job despite the low light level, keeping it relatively grain free. It could be sharper. Is it truly 4K or not? I'll have to dig in some more to test when I do the full review. But yeah, pretty impressed so far.
So yeah, obviously here on StreamYard, it's only going and YouTube's only going to be 1080p because StreamYard only allows us to push 1080p out. We had a question from James. He's asking, do you know the sensor size on the webcam, 4K res, and how many megapixel? Go ahead.
Yeah, so it's a 1/2.8 inch sensor. So that's actually a little smaller than you'll find in a lot of cell phones, but I'd say approximately cell phone sensor size. They call it a big sensor. I wouldn't really say it's big sensor until you get up to like a 1-inch sensor, but I suppose it's big for a lot of webcams.
That's what she said. So it's a Sony Starvis CMOS 8.3 megapixel sensor. I Googled it while you were chatting, and I haven't seen one in the flesh, but there's also some cool stuff like with the mount, right? Like the cable's detachable. It's got a magnetic mount. Cool little barrel design. So how was it installing and sort of the physical setup? Was it cool?
Yeah, so setup's as easy as any. So right now I have it up on a tripod, and it has a little stand that attaches to the bottom of the camera magnetically. So this is a different one I haven't used yet. This would be like if you just want to set it flat on a tabletop, or it actually folds out so you could lay it on top of on top of your monitor, just kind of perch it up there. But yeah, they're magnetic. So you just pop it in, and then the Type-C cable as well is made so that it plugs up into the bottom of the camera and sits flush. So it's a very clean setup.
Can you punch in again? Would it mess you up if you punched in again to where you had it before?
Yeah. So you can control the camera through Dell Peripheral Manager. Let me just load that back up. So if I punch back into 65,
right
here, and we can zoom in.
Oh, hey,
real close.
Holy moly, that is sexy right there.
Right, Big Brother is watching.
You know, I was gonna say, when you're punched in and we get it sized up similar, it looks pretty good. You're definitely way more saturated than you would have been with your Canon, the Canon gear that you normally use, but it looks pretty good.
Right. Yeah, the beard is a little extra orange today. But yeah, not too bad. You know, the detail again, I think it may just be because it's such a wide angle of view that by the time you crop into a usable length, at least with my setup, you know, with the laptop, obviously it'd be a lot closer. You know, you're throwing away a lot of that 4K resolution. But yeah, otherwise, you know, it has all the controls you'd expect to see. You can adjust the brightness and sharpness and contrast and everything else. So
pretty cool. So Chris is working on that review now. It'll probably be a little bit before he's done because camera gear is tough to evaluate. But come by the site when that is live. We will we'll probably talk about it again on the cast if Chris is going to be using it. We will get that article up ASAP. But this past couple of weeks, I got to take a look at some really cool hardware. I probably should have pulled them out of the test rig so I can hold them up, but I didn't because I'm not smart and I've been working on other stuff today. But yeah, I took a look at a Sapphire Nitro Radeon RX 6800 XT, a fully custom Radeon from the folks at Sapphire. Now, full disclosure, I got this card a long time ago. I didn't get it on first round, but I got it and said, you know what? Let me test it. And then I held on to it saying, let me wait until they're available. And then I waited a little longer. And then they weren't available. And we all know what happened to the GPU space the last few months. But I feel bad that I screwed Sapphire. So I said, let me get this review out the door. Because first of all, look at the phenomenal photography.
Hi, Thunder. I don't know if that's coming through the mic or not. Just
I did not hear it. I'm sorry. I think I have weather coming too, but I have a few more minutes than you. But we'll make this quick. So yeah, first of all, the photography, phenomenal as usual. My God, look at that. That's a photo.
Who did you outsource that to?
That was me, baby. That was all me. I swear to God, that was me. I'm actually thinking of doing a short video because, you know, let me get sidetracked for a second. I am all about efficiency. And I don't have a ton of space to have a proper photo studio. So I have been experimenting with different setups for super quick and dirty photos. This is the next upgrade, Chris. It just showed up today. I got a new Flashpoint, Flashpoint Flash. But these photos are in a foldable box, right, with a white background, single flash reflected off the corner of the ceiling. And I have a cool setup. I think it looks pretty damn good for a quick and dirty, no photo studio. But we'll talk about if I can do a video on it, I will. It's just I've been so freaking slammed, but it's cool. If you want to do quick and dirty product photography that's not quite perfect, but it's pretty darn good, I think it'll be interesting. But whatever, let me get back to this card. So Radeon RX 6800 XT, underneath it all, it's the same chip that AMD is using on their reference design. But Sapphire did a lot of really cool stuff with this card. And I think it's one of the nicer custom Radeons out there. So it's got multiple BIOS, multi-BIOS switch on the card for quiet or performance operation. And then there's a third mode where you can actually switch between different modes using the Trix software. That's not earth-shattering, so I'm not going to stick on that too much. But with previous gen Nitro Plus cards, like Sapphire has typically put massive coolers on there. They were kind of heavy. They were good, but the cards were beefy. They put a lot of stress on the socket. And while performance was good, it was a lot of weight. So they completely redesigned the cooler on this card, right? It's got thinner fins, and it's got like a weight, they call it a wave fin design, just to increase surface area. And the fins directly above the GPU actually curve in to funnel air right to the hottest part of the heatsink. It's also using 3 fans that are sort of a combo between typical axial fans and a barrel type fan. There's actually, it's hard to see in this shot, you could probably see it in this particular shot, but there is a rim around the fans with notches to help direct airflow. And obviously you see there's a ton of blades too. So the combination of new heatsink design, there's multiple heat sinks in there as well. So there's obviously big heat sink for the GPU. There's cooling for the VRM and the memory and the chokes as well. Multiple heat pipes with the 3 high performance fans, and you end up with, I forget the exact number, but it's like 40% lighter than the previous gen while offering similar thermal dissipation. So that's really cool. And over and above that, you end up with a strong cooler. Obviously, Sapphire did a little bit of overclocking. You have a boost clock up to 2360 megahertz on this, with a typical game clock over 2.1 gigahertz. Memory speed is the same though, but with that better cooler, it's able to sustain higher game clocks as well. So throughout testing, except for a couple anomalies where CPU limited, or it was like ray tracing where the cores, all the other cores weren't coming into play, it was faster than AMD's reference card across the board. Not quite fast enough to catch a 6900, but faster than a stock Radeon RX 6800 XT. And you get all that with a quieter card, with a higher performance cooler, with addressable RGB. It ditches the USB port for an extra display out. If you like the aesthetics, really nice card. Oh, one more thing I should mention with regard to the cooling. Sapphire claims they're using higher performance thermal pads for the VRM and other parts of the board too. So just all around, the only thing I would nitpick personally, I don't like triple slot cards. I wish they were able to shrink it down instead of 2.7 to get to the 2-slot form factor. But lots of enthusiasts don't care. It's usually the only card in the system nowadays. So I don't know, pretty cool. Chris, did you get a chance to look at this guy?
Again, I've skimmed through your review. Let me get my face back in here too. So yeah, definitely a good card. I think a lot of people are sleeping on the Radeon GPU still. There may be an odd issue here or there, but in general, great performance, and definitely giving NVIDIA a run for their money, is just like they're giving Intel a run for the money on the CPU side. So great looks, and this looks like a great card from Sapphire. All the numbers I'm seeing are definitely giving it an edge. So yeah, I don't think I'm bothered so much by the 3-slot design. I generally do like compact chassis, but again, if it's the only card, then you do have more leeway, and no one's really supporting multi-GPU setups like they could be anymore.
Not like the old days with the multi-GPUs. Yeah, about the only, obviously, the only caveat is that this card was actually available when the article went up. They were in stock at multiple places, but they were in stock at a price about double what they were expected to sell for. So Sapphire never published like a hard MSRP, but it was more than likely going to be between $720 to $800. More expensive than an AMD reference design card, obviously, because this one had more punch, and it's all custom with some additional features as well. But yeah, even though it was available, it's still about going for, it wasn't quite double what the expected street price was going to be, but bad enough to be painful. But you know what? If and when GPU prices stabilize, if you're in the market for a 6800 XT class GPU, this guy should definitely be on a short list. I really like the card. It was quiet. It was overclockable. I think I got to like almost 2.5 gigahertz, with a real easy overclock. I have to go back and check one of the numbers. I think I had a mistake in the voltage. Someone commented, but I haven't had a chance to plug it back in and double check that. But yeah, man, like super simple tweaks, big performance boost. Like it was tickling the 6900 XT in a couple of tests while overclocked. And it, remained quiet. The stock fan profile is so quiet, like you can hardly hear it over. I test in a chassis, so over the CPU fan and PSU fan, barely audible. And if you just tweaked it a little, you can keep temps much lower. Overclock was good. So yeah, really nice card. Unfortunately, I know everyone's going to complain about pricing, but it is what it is right now.
Right. The question is, can it run New World without bricking?
I don't know. So what was the scoop with that? What did I just see? That's the new Amazon thing that's killing cards?
Right. So apparently it's at least with the RTX 3090s, it's something about it is causing the card to brick. There's some people theorizing that maybe it's just pushing out so many frames that it's actually kind of cooking the memory chips that can't keep up. So I don't know exactly what the deal is. I'm sure some much smarter people are looking into it. But yeah, if you do have an RTX 3090 somehow, beware of running New World, the new MMO from Amazon.
I wonder, some games some older games or, really high frame rate games sort of act like a power virus. I wonder if you have one of those cards and you set it to max performance, max power, and, NVIDIA's not detecting. Maybe it's just running so freaking fast. It's cooking some stuff. Who knows? That's not, have you played it all?
I have not had a chance to play it yet. I think the beta just went live yesterday. So, this was some pretty immediate. I think most of the reports were with the EVGA for the Win version, but there were also reports from Gigabyte. So it's maybe not necessarily a particular manufacturer. And they're saying they recommend just capping the FPS seems to take care of it. So
interesting.
Something to keep in mind.
Well, hopefully everybody that was affected is in warranty and cards are in stock at the manufacturer to replace those. That kind of stinks, but hey, what are you going to do? Cool. So I think we'll move on. If you no more questions from the chat, Chris, you good?
I'm good.
Cool. So let's jump to the final piece of today's live stream puzzle. I also took a look at recently the Intel SSD D7P 5510. So not only is that a mouthful, it's a change to Intel's naming convention on their enterprise class SSDs. This guy is pretty awesome. So not only is it high capacity, I took a look at a 7.68 terabyte model. This is a PCIe Gen 4 drive with a new controller, obviously a new firmware to go with that, with Intel's latest 3D NAND on here. And this guy just smoked the benchmark. So full disclosure, it didn't have other PCIe Gen 4 enterprise SSDs to compare it to. So most of the comparison numbers are versus Gen 3 enterprise SSDs. But literally across the board, super strong performance. So obviously, in random 4K transfers, it was among the best of the group. You don't see huge leaps in performance there for the random 4Ks, say, in iometer. But in terms of latency, running those iometer tests, huge improvement, especially at higher Q depths. So with an enterprise, on most consumer workloads, the Q depths 95% of the time, if not more, are around Q depth ones. There's not a ton of requests. But enterprise SSDs is a different story. So as Q depths go up, as you have more requests on the drive, you want it to be able to maintain strong performance. This drive rocked in that regard versus the PCIe Gen 3 drives with the older controllers and NAND. So just super strong performance. Also, thanks to that, fatter interface and the newer architecture, sequentials were monstrous, over 7 gigs a second in sequentials, sequential reads. Writes were stronger than all of the competing drives as well. And, latency super strong too. So strong 4K transfers at various queue depths, really strong sequential transfers as well, and really good latency under a bunch of characteristics. So like super strong performance. I even, I probably I want to tweak this test moving forward and try to make it a little more definitive, but I do what's called the latency under load test too. So I start a full write across the entire drive, and while data is being written to the drive, retest latency with iometer using different access patterns and queue depths. And the latency hit while the drive is under load was also like minimal on this drive. It hardly took sort of any impact at all. So really, really difficult to nitpick any issues with this drive. And because it's an enterprise drive, you have higher endurance ratings than a typical SSD, plus end-to-end data protection and power loss protection. Just really, really a nice drive. Now, pricing somewhat higher than a consumer drive, as you would expect, but not like out of the realm of possibility, right? 21 cents a gig for the drive I looked at for the 7.68 terabyte drive. So not too nuts. Pretty cool drive. Chris, any thoughts?
No, very impressive look on that drive. Obviously it is enterprise, so it's, not really intended for the everyday user, but would you throw one of these in your system and with Threadripper or something like that?
So, on one hand, yes, right, because the performance is so good. What I think most people don't realize with enterprise drives, though, is they typically, when they're going to fail, they just die. Like you won't get a smart warning. Like they just go. Whereas on a consumer SSD, you'll get smart warnings. Maybe some bits get pushed aside and not used. Whereas I'm not 100% certain this particular model retains this behavior, but
right, they're going to assume you have some kind of RAID redundancy.
Exactly. So they're assuming that data integrity is of the utmost importance, and that you have backups and redundancy. So when there's failure or potential failure, they just die. So I'm not sure everyone would want that in a consumer setup, but if you did, or if you're throwing them in a RAID, in a NAS, that would be sick. But
right, So this was the 8 terabyte model. Is there is that the max capacity, or how high up does it go?
This was the big one. There's also a 384.
Okay.
And there's a smaller capacity and of a slightly different model that has higher endurance. I think they're just tweaking the over provisioning on that guy. I'm not certain because I didn't get briefed on that other one. But when I was looking up specs and data sheets, I saw a slightly different model in the same family and with higher endurance. So I think it was just tweaked over provisioning. But yeah, but killer drive, like really nice SSD. I'm as more and more companies come with PCIe Gen 4 enterprise drives, we're going to see some nice numbers like this. It was just huge boost. Like it's one of those just across the board wins. It was really nice drive.
Yeah. So
cool. So what do you think? Should we wrap it there? Should we keep this one quick and dirty, stay under an hour?
Yeah. I mean, we're always talking about how we want to keep these to 45 minutes. And I think today we might actually do it.
I think we can, unless I blather on about all the places where they can find us across the web. Before I do that, I'm going to drop a hint for the next giveaway.
Is there a tease?
It's the same tease as last time. I swear we're almost ready to launch. I got the full spec sheet on a killer gaming rig we're going to give away. It's going to be another full gaming rig with a beefy GeForce and Intel's fastest desktop gaming CPU. We talked about it. I don't think we disclosed the brand last time. I'm not going to do it again this time just in case.
No, we didn't.
But yeah, so really high-end, full gaming rig, fully loaded, ready for some serious action. Just not quite ready to throw it up on the site. We're just waiting for the okay from the company that reached out, but that should be really soon. So yeah, keep an eye on Hot Hardware for that giveaway. That should be really straightforward, like a couple of pages. Maybe like and subscribe to the YouTube channel if you're watching this and like and subscribe right now. Yeah, and that'll be it. We'll just randomly pick a winner using Gleam, and yeah, you could win a killer rig. So keep an eye out for that. Other than that, though, Chris, I think I'm going to wrap it up because my kids are clamoring for pizza in the other room. So
understandable.
Yeah, absolutely. If you enjoyed this live stream, please like and subscribe. If you're on YouTube, we would really appreciate it. We're trying to grow the channel, and any support that you guys could give us would be greatly appreciated. We're also live streaming this on Twitch. We just had Mr. BBI comment. I'm sorry that we missed you too as well. If you're not a subscriber over there, please subscribe on Twitch. We also have Val that streams on Twitch. She does lots of fun gaming over there.
Is she going live today at 7:30?
I think she's coming. Yeah, live. I think a little over an hour after this stream, she'll be over there gaming tonight, unless something's changed. I'm not sure. We're also live streaming on Facebook. If that's your preferred social media platform, follow us on facebook.com/HotHardware. Obviously, we'd love for you to come by the main site where we've been for over 2 decades, hothardware.com. We could also use your support on Patreon. We just started a Patreon a few months ago. Haven't been pimping it very much, but if you want to keep independent publishing alive and sites like ours that are not owned by some big tech conglomerate, go over to Patreon, help us out. The web advertising business is tough. We're trying to keep the lights on, so any help you could give us is greatly appreciated.
And if you have ideas for things you want to see from the Patreon as well, let us know.
Yeah, absolutely. That's actually a darn good point. If there's something you'd like from us that could be a real, easy perk, we want to do it. So let us know. We haven't had all the best ideas there. If you have a good idea, we want to hear it. That would be awesome. Obviously, if you're here on Facebook, youtube.com/hothardware, facebook.com/hothardware, twitter.com/hothardware, Twitch. .tv/hothardware Twitch, I believe is the name over there. We are all over the web. Just search for Hot Hardware. You'll find us. Dave, Chris, and I, a bunch of the other guys, doing the best we can. And I think with that, we will bid you adieu. Good night, everybody. Thanks a lot.